From Studio 1A in Tampa, Florida, comes a talk show that really feels your pain and tells you like it is. We love America and all that freedom-loving Americans want to protect. Live from coast to coast and on your radio, it's For the People with Keith Allen.
We'll help you survive this thing called life. We're for the people. Whatever your source of stress or strife, for the people is there.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. and Mrs. America. I am Keith Allen and proudly welcoming you into this Friday's edition of For the People on October the 20th, 2017. There's a lot of things to talk about today, and I just want to talk about something that I thought was quite remarkable that happened, and maybe you heard about it, maybe you haven't. Do you know that Trump has been wanting to get a budget passed, wants to lower the taxes. He's been talking about it. Well, the Senate just passed a $4 trillion budget plan, and check this out. Only one Republican voted against it. Only one. What does reconciliation mean? Reconciliation means the Democrats won't be able to mount a filibuster challenge to this plan. The action saying tonight we completed the first steps towards replacing our broken tax code by passing comprehensive, fiscally responsible budget that will help put the federal government on a path to balance. We have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to replace a failed tax code that holds Americans back with one that works for them, he added. Did any Republicans vote against the bill? Yes, I said one. Only one senator, Rand Paul of Kentucky. He joined all 46 Democrats and 2 independents in voting against the bill. And what he said, we can't spend our way to prosperity, Paul explained. He says, I will fight for the biggest, boldest tax cut we can pass, but I could not, in good conscience, vote for a budget that ignores spending caps that have been the law of the land for years and simply pretend it didn't matter. The final vote tally was 51-49. Now, how the Democrats reacted, not surprisingly, Democrats were displeased with the vote. It shifts the burden from the wealthy and puts it squarely on the back of the middle class and blows a hole in the deficit to boot. And who says this? Senator Chuck Grassley of New York said, I think it will go down in history as one of the worst budgets that Congress has ever passed. Really? I mean, the reality check is here. Barack Obama racked up the national debt by hundreds of millions of dollars more than any other president. Trillions of dollars, excuse me. That's a lot more money than any other president in history. So how can Chuck Grassley in good conscience say this is the worst spending? That's exactly what we have done. Now, to Rand Paul's words, that we can't spend ourselves out of crisis. But the fact is we've had crisis, a lot of crisis in how we got here to begin with. How we got here to begin with is trade policies have not worked out well for America or for Americans to boot. People ask me frequently, why did you vote for Donald Trump? I voted for Donald Trump because we need more jobs over here. We need real jobs over here. We don't need to be shipping off all these factories overseas where it damages the economy long term. GATT and NAFTA brought us that. The TPP deal brought us more of that. Rand Paul, I do believe that in his conscience, and I do believe with his dad for years, have said that we have to watch what we spend. We spend a lot of money. The fact of the matter is, if we don't spend the money, the economy will tank. We have to become fiscally responsible. That is true. This is a recovery effort. just like Obama said that he had to spend the money too. The Dems did the same exact thing by writing checks that we probably shouldn't because we didn't have the money. We just printed more money. And this is a habit that we've been in for too long. This doesn't muster the precepts of Dave Ramsey's program with rice and beans and beans and rice. There is a definite problem with spending in Washington. Things ain't cheap. Military's not cheap. Disasters are not cheap. We didn't have the money. We didn't have the money. We don't have the money. We borrowed the money. Now, the IOUs, we're good for it. But unfortunately, unless we get the jobs back over here, our kids, and so forth and so on, are going to be paying this national debt down. And it's not going to go away anytime soon. Free trade sounded terrific back in the 90s, the way that Bill Clinton touted it. That it was going to be a beautiful thing and it was going to be good for everybody. How we got here, look backwards and you'll understand where we are today. I'm not happy with the amount of money that was a $4 trillion budget plan. Things are definitely a whole lot pricier than ever before. You can see that at the grocery store. You can see that at the gas pump. Washington cannot spend themselves out of this debt. That is true. Rand Paul is right. I think he's dead on. But if we don't write the check, the federal government doesn't operate. States cannot operate. They're bankrupt. Puerto Rico, what are we going to do with them? What are we going to do with the islands? What are we going to do with all of this mess? Donald Trump, I haven't heard him for the last several months talk about what he was talking about for a while on the campaign trail. About bringing these jobs over. He's talking about other things. This has to be a job number one for Washington to make sure that we get these jobs over here like nobody's business. Yes, Apple Computer is bringing it over. I heard Trump the other day boast that we need more than Apple. That's a good revenue there, and that's terrific. It's going to bring some good jobs over there, but that's not the end-all, be-all. We got tens of thousands of other workers that are employed by foreign countries doing American jobs and American workers, and they're taking the jobs away. Good paying jobs, too, that used to be American jobs. And because of greedy corporations, Apple's still going to make a profit. Even if they have to jack up the price, look at their new iPhone. Starting at, $1,000? Or more. It depends if you do gold-plated. But their customer base will pay for the phones time and time again. They like the product. Will people pay a little bit more to get the product? Do they know that it's American-made? I've seen people do it. I've done it myself. Yeah, it may not be cheap like China, but that's the problem. We've settled for cheap stuff. We like cheap stuff. If you can save a deal, get a deal, that's good. You don't care where it comes from. That's the problem, too. I mean, that's really getting under the hood, folks, and really looking at it. And I understand from the vantage of a poor family where they're like, you know what, I would like to, subscribe and be able to support these local farms, these organic farms, and we'd like to eat better. But, folks, all we can afford is Walmart. And that's it. And where it comes from, I'm sorry. But I have to do it. And I understand you're on a very tight budget. And guess what? You're proud. You work hard. And you're not on welfare. There's some, and it works for some folks for a little time where they get on welfare check, coupones, as the Spanish people say, but you're getting some food, you're getting subsidized, and that's a beautiful thing because it works for you. But there's some people that just can't do it unless they absolutely, positively needed to do it because it was meant, for a short time. And it shouldn't have been a lifelong sentence to be taken care of by the state. It's kind of like being a ward of the state. To constantly get that handout and not working for it. Some people legitimately, honestly need it, but that's something that is costing us an arm and a leg. And there's people that have abused this system for so many years, and the Democrats have said nothing about it. Donald Trump says something about it, and then everybody hates him because he wants to take our bennies away. I mean, we have to really start getting back to basics. I talk about this very frequently on the show. I mean, seriously, looking at what we're doing. Seriously, honest to goodness, at the end of the day, you want to have fiscal responsibility in your homes, but there's not fiscal responsibility in Washington and how they spend that and appropriate that money. And then the amount of money that always kind of sickens me, and I agree with Rand Paul on this, is the amount of checks that we write to other countries. The amount of money that we exchange. And for what we get, we don't get a whole lot. Sometimes doesn't appear to be anything. And that's troublesome. And Trump, yes, he's fought that too. And that's mainly with NATO. He said, look, we're the ones flipping most of this bill here. At the United Nations, we're flipping the most of the bill here. We need other countries to start, writing the checks. And that's the problem. America has always written the checks. And Trump has, as a good CEO, CFO, has said that's insanity. See, this is the stuff that I like Donald Trump for, because he says the stuff that any good business person can see. We got to stop the bleeding. How do we make profits? How do we start doing things correctly and doing it for the right reasons, for the right ways? Folks, this is just heavy on me because, I see it and I'm like, okay, this is great. We have money in the bank now. We can spend it. I'm happy that there'll be enough money now to build up our military. We need to have a military that's ready. We are headed towards a possible showdown with North Korea. And what the fallout from that is going to be, I have no idea. There's a lot of people that are very worried about this story, by the way. A lot of people on the left are saying this president is rushing us to war, this administration. You got a bunch of war-hungry mongers. And I don't see it that way. I consider myself to be a moderate conservative, not a crazy right-wing lunatic, conspiratorial idiot. That's not me. I'm a realist. And folks, you have a guy who is worse than Saddam Hussein. That's a whole can of worms to talk about Saddam Hussein and the Gulf War and weapons of mass destruction and all. That's for another show, and I have my thoughts on that. But this guy has shown that he's hell-bent on weapons of mass destruction. There's other countries that have nukes, and they don't act like this guy. They don't do the things that he's doing. He's terrorizing, and he's terrorized the peninsula already, sending millions underground in Japan by launching ICBM missiles over them, not knowing if it's going to fall on them, land into them, not knowing. Sirens, could you imagine? On American streets here, having sirens, take cover, take cover, take cover. Can you imagine? For a moment, it's happened already to our allies. And they say that Kim Jong-un has threatened us to say that he is going to launch something that is going to decimate America. Is it just rhetoric, or is there some truth laden in there? If this guy really wants to preserve his legacy, his dynasty, his family, whatever you want to call it, of inhumane treatment of its people, is totalitarian. This is the guy who the locals there in North Korea believe that the guy doesn't poop. He doesn't defecate. I'm